15th of August 1940, and we've got one of the first newspaper reports here of a Battle of Britain battle, written, obviously at a time quite early in the Battle of Britain when it's still very much unfolding. Nobody knows what the outcome's going to be. The journalists don't know, the readers don't know, and there's a lot of fear that we're going to be beaten, that the RAF is going to be wiped out. Far along the coast, a little smudge sat on the grey water. A convoy was coming up the channel, approaching Hell's Corner, as the Germans called it. The convoy was a big one. Over it flew an ensign of the Coastal Command, watching for U-boats and mines. On shore, anti-aircraft gunners stood vigilant. A woman, whose husband was out there in his ship, kept a pair of field glasses fixed on the vessels as they slowly crept into view. Workmen busy on fortifications looked up now and then. The sea was like a stage set for the big scene. Hermann Goering had decided to try at sea the blitzkrieg tactics which had worked so successfully on land, a fast, mechanised striking force covered by German dive bombers. It was to be the prelude of a great Nazi counter-blockade. So at this point, the Germans' primary objective is not actually to undertake an air battle and to try to defeat the RAF. What they're actually trying to do is enforce a blockade on Britain by bombing the ports, by bombing the merchant ships. But then at dawn on the 8th of August, a curtain went up. A swarm of enemy E-boats, fast motorboats, appeared suddenly, whipped boldly up to the convoy and fired their torpedoes. 3 coasting vessels were hit and sunk. 1 E-boat was sunk and another damaged. The rest made off, shells splashing on their tails. The convoy proceeded on its way, but at 9 o'clock a flock of Junkers 87 dive bombers with Messerschmitt 109 stepped up behind to 20,000 feet, approached to the attack out of the sun. A squadron of Hurricanes spotted the foe, climbed to 16,000 feet, got the order to swoop. 6 Nazi bombers went down in smoke before the Messerschmitt escorts knew what was happening. When the Messerschmitts tried to rescue their comrades, 3 of them were shot down too. I mean, it's interesting that it's referencing the Hurricane rather than the Spitfire. I've always thought of the Spitfire as being the hero of the Battle of Britain. But actually, having looked it up, the Hurricane shot down more German planes than the Spitfire did in the Battle of Britain. And it's suggesting that the Messerschmitts are being shot down left, right and centre, which history shows is probably right. They didn't actually perform that well against the Spitfires and the Hurricanes. One British pilot had engine trouble, but managed to shoot a Hun down as he was diving for home. As though ashamed of itself, his engine started again and he was able to get another Nazi. Then his engine folded up altogether, but he managed to make home. After half an hour of fighting, the enemy packed up. Again, the convoy proceeded. Between 11:30 and lunch, another battle developed over its mastheads. I don't know why they use the word lunch in this context. I don't think they were stopping for lunch. A still larger formation of German dive bombers and fighters. This time, twin-engine Messerschmitt 110s came over. 3, as well as a Messerschmitt 109 supposedly acting as a decoy, were shot down. While this part of the fight was going on, a squadron of Spitfires was chasing 7 Messerschmitt 109s back across the channel. 6 of the 7 never got there. After the excitement of the morning and midday, there was a lull, but the most violent attack on the convoy was yet to come. Between 4 and 5 o'clock there appeared a swarm of no fewer than 150 Nazi planes, Junkers 187 and 188 dive bombers, Heinkel 113s and Messerschmitt 109 and 110 fighters. The result of this dogfight brought the total of Nazi planes down to 61. 21 were destroyed by the same squadron of Hurricanes, which in a few hours thus collected the war's biggest bag of enemy aircraft in home defence. British losses were 16 fighters. The convoy went through all 3 battles without a single lost ship, except those sunk by the German E-boats, though damage was done to several. So it's claiming that 61 German planes were shot down, when history actually shows that the Germans lost about 30 to 35 planes in this battle. So the figures do get exaggerated, often because maybe 3 or 4 pilots all shot at the same plane at the same time, and it went down, and 3 or 4 people have claimed that they've hit it. So the figures are not always right. It then goes on and it says, from Goering's point of view, the first blitzkrieg at sea experiment, launched with 400 aircraft, had failed. But once the German gets an idea firmly planted in his thick skull, he sticks to it, and Marshal Goering is no exception. So, no doubt here about whose side this newspaper's on, talking about Hermann Goering and his thick skull. But actually, again, looking at the history books, it is generally thought that early approach, trying to blockade Britain by hitting the merchant ships and hitting the ports, just didn't work. A few days after his first costly experiment at air blockade, the Luftwaffe suffered its second drubbing, with a loss this time of 66 bombers and fighters against 26 British machines. They were shot down at 3 distinct points of attack: Dover, where the enemy tried to destroy a balloon barrage which we found to be a great nuisance; Portland, where he tried to damage the docks; and off the East Anglian coast, where 40 raiders were intercepted as they tried to attack another convoy. Between 50 and 60 enemy planes were in action over Dover. They were engaged first by a Spitfire squadron, which went into action 4 times during the day. The squadron's best efforts of the day was when it destroyed 10 of the new and much vaunted Messerschmitt 110 Jaguar fighter bombers. These Spitfires were up at about 20,000 feet, while the anti-aircraft guns around and in the town were firing at stragglers which had dropped below the level of the rest of the battle. The guns brought down 3 Messerschmitts. In the Portland action, squadrons of both Spitfires and Hurricanes were slithering backwards and forwards through the enemy formations like knitting needles through wool. Once the formations were broken up, individual defenders picked off their adversaries in fair combat, say 1 to 3, and dealt very finely with them. One auxiliary squadron shot down 10 Messerschmitts, while the regular squadron, which had broken all records in the convoy attack a few days before, added another 5 to its general bag. So successful was the defence of Portland that only 150 of 200 enemy bombers were able to get over the coast, and were so harassed they could drop no more than about 40 bombs. I mean, I don't know whether that's a good result or not. Out of 200 bombers, 150 made it through. We shot down 50, so 25%. I don't know whether that would be considered a good result or not, but what's really clear is that this newspaper is trying to raise morale, isn't it? It's trying to kind of paint a picture of, didn't our boys do well? Meanwhile, the Spitfire squadron, which had been in action over Dover earlier in the day, received orders to go out and look after a convoy coming along the East Anglian coast. When they got to their patrol station, they were lucky enough to find a swarm of 40 Messerschmitt 110 Jaguars about to attack the convoy. They sailed in. The Jaguars apparently did not see them until the first attack had been delivered, when they tried to form a mutually protective circle, but it was too late, and 10 of them were shot down before the rest decided in a hurry to go home. And then it says, battle resumed. With hardly a pause, the great air battle of Britain continued on Monday, August the 12th. That's the first mention I've come across of the term Battle of Britain in these papers. By this time, the number of enemy planes shot down was getting monotonous. Another 39, with a British loss of 9 fighters. I mean, I don't know how accurate these numbers are. They're probably not. You get the feeling that the newspaper is really trying to kind of build morale by saying, aren't we doing well kind of line. The most interesting thing about this attack was a crop of sayings made after it by captured Nazi pilots. A badly wounded German who came down by parachute and was covered with a shotgun by a farm groom put up his hands as high as they would go and said, "No more fighting, the English are too good." Yeah, right, I bet he did. Stepping out with his hands in the same position into a field full of cabbages into which he had force landed, a much bemedalled Nazi pilot gave himself up to an ordinary yokel, explaining to him, "These Spitfires are very good. They were too fast for me, so I'm out of it now." But then it says, all these disasters notwithstanding, the Nazis continued piling on the agony this week in new and expensive battles around the southeast coast of Albion. If you like this content, please take a look at my channel, Not History But News. I'm going through a big box full of old newspapers that I found in an attic, and they're full of really interesting things like this, little news snippets from the Second World War. They're really fascinating to look through, so please take a look, and if you like it, please like and subscribe. Thank you very much.